Tom.
And we are VIMTV, Velocities in Music. Folks, today we have the esteemed privilege of doing a sequel album. I've always wanted to do a sequel album, and we finally got it from a band called Pain of Salvation, Road Salt 2. We reviewed Road Salt 1 last summer, and I think that album was released in 2010.
Yeah.
And it was a request, a very good request. We were very favorable on that album. You know, Pain of Salvation is a, they used to do kind of more of a prog metal, some of their older works in their discography, whereas the two Road Salt albums have kind of come down to a more prog rock level, and more of a theatrical level to it. There's a kind of a theming and story going on here. Now, to be honest, I don't know the details of that story. I've just been literally enjoying the relationship of the work and how these songs were made and constructed.
And honestly, I mean, a lot of the things that we said about the sound of Road Salt 1 applies pretty directly here. I mean, you know, same production style, similar songwriting style in general. You got, you know, a lot of the themings, like what I said about Road Salt 1, this feels like the hard-rocking older brother of like Jesus Christ Superstar and some of the big anthemic musicals like that, and that's what this feels like to me. I mean, it flows very well. There does seem to be a kind of story going along with it. You know, you've got the theme opening the album, the end credits ending the album, you know, with its, you know, Road Salt 1 counterpart.
And that's actually one aspect of this album that I really like. Well, whereas, you know, with the two album titles, Road Salt 1 and Road Salt 2, you would think that it would kind of feel like a double album where this part is just the second part, or the second act is just a continuation of the material you heard in the first one. Not true. This is completely different. They set these two albums up to be two separate albums, and they very much so are.
It's cool though, you know, listening for those things that I mentioned that are similar, and then picking apart the differences and seeing what they were going for differently. It's a really cool dichotomy there.
I actually think Road Salt 2 is more cohesive as an album. You know, there's an intro and an outro track to this one.
Yeah.
And the whole the sound itself, the style and the genre that they work within, whereas Road Salt 1, they were kind of going all over the place. They did a lot of different stuff on that album. This is very cohesive as a prog rock album. This album hauls ass throughout the entire album. It starts, you know, with track 2, Softly, She Cries. Both Tom and I love that track. You know, it really just starts rocking out, you know, the guitar parts, you know, the dueling guitar parts that you often hear, and the crazy bass lines that you hear, and the, you know, very excited,
very melodic though too. And I like that they can even incorporate the bass guitar into the more ballad, you know, softer songs.
Like
and
1979.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I love about this band, is they just balls out go for it, and I love that attitude. They don't hold back at all. They don't care if something made the first time you hear it sound a little bit tacky. Some of it did to me, but then I ended up loving it for that same reason, just because I just admire the fact that they just go for it. They don't even care. They just go for it. Like, hey, we have this idea, let's fucking do it. Who cares?
This album particularly does a really good job of just making a bunch of those prog rock songs that are applicable to both metal fans and non-metal fans alike. Now, I've actually become more of a metal fan over the past couple of years, but what it comes down to is, like, a good comparison for this is like Coheed and Cambria or the Mars Volta, but you know, there's a lot of classic references here to Soundgarden, to even the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and even to Rush or like Led Zeppelin even at times. You know, all these classic rock references that the sound harkens back to.
It's in that good kind of like metal crossover gray area where I would strongly recommend this to people who might like some heavier instrumentals but don't get into like the screaming vocals. Because I mean, this guy can scream if he needs to, and he has some really screeching, powerful stuff that, like you said, harkens more back to Rush and Led Zeppelin. But yet there still is a much heavier aspect to it, and I love that they can pull that off so well.
And I think that this just comes down to, this is a really well done album that plays well start to finish. It's just the only thing holding it back is that this is a sound that's been done a lot before, and really, is there anything here that some of these tracks might not be the catchiest tracks you've ever heard. They really don't have that big thesis statement track. It's almost too cohesive. And in comparison to Road Salt 1, which I do actually think I prefer, while I think this is strong, I do prefer that album just because that album was able to capture my attention and be so diverse.
And there were a lot better, while this is a better album as a whole, like it's better albumized, I think Road Salt 1 has more standout tracks and more variety in the styles of tracks. You have, you know, songs like Sleeping Under the Stars and Curiosity and Linoleum, like songs that really stick out. And while some of those styles are kind of here, I feel like they're not even quite as extreme with it. They don't try to get that variety as much in there. They just kind of do what they do, and they do it really well.
Yeah, and I think that this album could potentially be a grower for me, anyways, that I might actually like this more and more as time goes on. In fact, I'm already kind of experiencing that. I was originally mid-70s. Tom, I'm actually going to go against what I just told you. I'm going to go 80 for this one.
Okay.
I think this is a strong release. There are some things that could be improved about it that would make me like it more. A little bit more variety, as we said, but very cohesive. Were kind of what I'm looking for in an album. So I'm excited to see how I listen to both Road Salt albums and how they evolve over time as I continue to listen to them.
Back to back sometime.
Yeah, I haven't done that yet.
Yeah, me neither.
Just because I right away kind of noticed how that they were meant to be two separate albums.
Yeah.
But listening to them back to back just because of the titles would be an interesting experience too. Where are you at with this one?
I'm going 77.
Cool. So right in that upper 70s range overall for us, which I think is a very good score for an album like this. Definitely recommended. If you guys haven't heard of Pain of Salvation, you're not that well known of a band.
No.
I think they got kind of a cult following though, which is always
probably bigger in Europe.
Right. Let us know what you think. If you haven't heard them, please check them out. These guys are great. We're a big fan of them here at VIMTV. www.velocitiesandmusic.com. Leave us a comment there, or youtube.com/velocitiesandmusic. Follow us on Twitter. Like us on Facebook. Thank you guys for watching VIMTV. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And we are Velocities and Music, moving music critique forward.